I'm going to check on Dale. Normally he's on here.
Sure. Yeah.
He's doing a little bit of email, I think, prep for the council. He'll be right on.
Okay, good.
Conwell, Jones, Brown, and Simon we're looking for then.
Okay, we'll at least give them 5 minutes. Sometimes you start messing with this equipment and you have to backtrack and go around in circles a little bit.
Hey, Walter, did you see Councilman Miller's email back to Merriman?
Yeah, I'll take a look at that in a few minutes, Trevor. Once we get moving here and we get past that sports facility agreement, I'll introduce that and I'll go have a look at it. I think I can reconcile it.
We're going to go into executive session first before the Indians discussion. So you might.
That gives me time. I mean, at the end, Trevor, the issue is that the 3.8 million is what's needed, I think, for year 2 of Say Yes. But what was appropriated was basically half that number because they appropriated what they did in first year. So, remember second year, they doubled up the number of staff, the family sports specialists. Okay. So they're asking for that second portion.
Yvonne's getting on shortly, she said.
Okay.
Ashley, did you send the link to Mr. Drucker for the 2 o'clock meeting?
No, I haven't sent it out yet. I was going to send it after executive session was over.
Okay, I'll respond to them then. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I already told her, Jean, that the email would be forthcoming.
Okay.
I responded to Molly a little earlier.
Okay, good. They always ask.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so we have Simon. Oh my goodness, I didn't recognize you, Chantel.
Yes, I'm rushing my this afternoon now. So
nice.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe we're looking for Miller, Conwell, and Jones.
Conwell said she's coming on, and Purnell is also. I just checked with him.
Okay, here's Mr. Miller.
Maybe I'll go blonde because Councilwoman Brown. You guys are growing beards. We should do something. Right. Yeah. Platinum. Cute.
It is. It's awesome.
Dale and I are going to dye our hair red.
Who is?
Dale and I.
I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not dyeing my hair
He doesn't
red.
know about
I'm
it yet.
dyeing it blue. This is an election year.
All right. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Can't beat that.
Yeah. Well, nonpartisan council and all that.
Oh, how funny. I will say we are live streaming at this point.
Yes.
Thanks, Dave.
Like I said, we're becoming too casual with this.
Yep.
Hi, Purnell. All right, we're just looking for Yvonne Conwell.
I know she is coming on. I don't know if you want to get started. She did tell me she'll be on in a couple minutes, so.
It is up to our president.
Well, we'll just give her till, I got 104. Why don't we wait till 105?
Okay.
We'll go ahead.
Hey, who's that sitting in Chantel's seat? Chantel, I like the look. It looks nice.
Who knew this would get so much? Which is why I don't change my hair often. So I am very humbled and grateful for all of the very kind words. So thank you. I'm more often.
But we almost made a mistake because I almost came on with exactly the same hairdo. So I would have been like, not cool. So,
I wouldn't mind that. That'd be a good one.
Well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started, Jean, and Yvonne can join us any minute now.
Okay,
All right, calling to order the Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole, Tuesday, August the 4th. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jones,
Here?
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Stevens. I see her name on the screen. All right, we'll come back to her. Ms. Simon,
Yes, here.
Ms. Baker,
Here.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Mr. Schron, Mr. Schron,
He's muted.
Thank you. Here, sorry.
thank you. Ms. Conwell? Ms. Conwell's absent at the moment. Ms. Stevens again? And Council President Brady.
Here.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment today, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. President, Will Tarter submitted public comment via email and I forwarded it to all the members.
All right, thank you. First, today we're going to go into executive session. As you know, all meetings of the Cuyahoga County Council are open to the public under the Ohio open meeting laws. Under that law, council may go into executive session during a meeting for authorized purposes. During this executive session, council confers outside the hearing of the public. Council may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All decisions are made in public. This afternoon, the council will go into executive session to discuss collective bargaining matters. During this time, council members will go off screen and return once the executive session ended. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining matters?
So moved.
Second. Brown.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. Clerk, please call the roll for going into executive session.
Calling the roll, Mr. Jones,
Here. Yes. Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Simon,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Tuma,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Schron,
Yes.
Ms. Conwell? Ms. Conwell is still absent at the moment. Council President Brady.
Here.
Motion carries.
Yes.
Okay. As usual, just take a moment for the room to be set up to move over to executive session. Please all have your videos on. We're getting quicker at this now.
Now, I don't have to push the join, do I?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, for the remaining folks, if you would undo your video and mute yourselves so we can put up the sign for executive session. And please keep in mind that we are still recording live, and that's why we asked you to do this. Thank you.
Jean, is everyone over?
I believe so. We're just looking for Yvonne, and I don't know if she has signed on yet.
Okay, so you want me to go ahead and put the screen up?
Yes, just kind of keep in mind to watch for her, I guess.
Yeah, if I see her, I'll move her over on here.
Okay, thank you.
She's here,
you hear
I think.
Oh, you're here?
I'm here, but my.
Oh, I see her phone number.
For
Okay.
whatever reason, when I hit the Zoom link, it won't let me in the meeting
Oh,
for whatever reason. So I did the one tap, whatever.
Okay, I see your phone number. I'm gonna just send you the link. It should let you join by phone.
Okay, you're gonna send it again?
Yeah, I just sent it to you.
okay.
All right, she's in there. Ashley, go ahead and put the sign up.
Thank you. Walter, will you undo your video, please? Bottom left corner. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine.
No problem. Thanks, Trevor.
So are we back?
Looks like we're back.
All right, we're reconvening the council meeting and we're now back on the record. The next item, item 5, clerk, would you please read into the record?
Resolution number 2020-0155. Authorizing a sports facility agreement between Cuyahoga County, Cleveland Indians Baseball Company, and Gateway Economic Development Corporation of Greater Cleveland in the amount not to exceed $3,500,000 in accordance with supplemental trust indenture number 5 between Cuyahoga County and the Huntington National Bank as trustee, dated October 1, 2017.
All right, well, we have quite a few people here today to present or answer questions if necessary, but we also want to start, I guess, with Ken Stillman, the chairman of Gateway. Ken, you with us today?
Yes, thank you, Council President. My understanding is that the county budget office wanted to give some introductory remarks and then I would take over from there. Is that your understanding?
That's fine. That's just fine. Yes, go ahead.
It's fine. Walter Parfaios from the fiscal office, just introducing the item. This is a sports facility agreement between Cuyahoga County, Cleveland Indians Baseball Company, and the Gateway Economic Development Corporation of Greater Cleveland to provide funding for major capital repairs. And as Ken said, at this point, I just introduced Ken Silman, chairman of the Gateway Board, to provide more detail and answer questions.
Thank you, Walter.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Again, as Walter indicated, I'm Ken Silman. I'm chairman of the Gateway Board, and I'm here to explain this item. Some background before I get to the particular item. Gateway, as I think all the council members know, owns the site of the ballpark and the arena. And long ago, Gateway entered into long-term lease agreements where the Indians lease the ballpark from Gateway and the Cavaliers lease the field house from Gateway. One of the key terms of those leases is a provision that says that for all capital repairs to the facilities, that the Gateway organization is responsible for capital repairs exceeding $500,000. And the way we've managed this over time is that Gateway reviews every proposed capital project submitted by either the Indians or the Cavs. We have our own consulting engineer that reviews their requests to determine, number one, is the repair necessary? And number two, determine whether it is over 500,000, which triggers Gateway's responsibility. Once that review is done and the engineer confirms those 2 points, the Gateway Board votes, and if both tests are met, Gateway Board votes to approve the capital repair. Typically, the team then proceeds to make the repair and awaits reimbursement from Gateway. The usual source of reimbursement are the sin tax monies that were extended back by vote of the county voters back in 2014. That's the usual protocol, but obviously 2020, there's nothing usual about this year and the pandemic and everything that's occurred. The Indians are very challenged financially this year because, like all the other Major League Baseball franchises, they're playing a lot fewer games than normal. And those games they are playing, there are no fans in the ballpark. So the normal revenue sources from paid attendance and from concessions and everything else is not available to them. So the Indians have asked us to expedite the amount of money that Gateway owes to the team. And because the Syntax proceeds are going to take a while to catch up, they suggested, and we are proposing, that the $3.5 million that Gateway now owes the Indians be paid from the sports facility reserve, which was a account created as part of the Q deal several years ago. And I believe that your staff will advise you that the terms under which that sports facility reserve was created say that you have to, before you spend money out of it, you have to have an agreement with the team. And my understanding is that the legislation before you is the authorization of the agreement that would allow the expenditure of $3.5 million of sports facility reserve monies to reimburse the Indians for a number of capital repairs that they've performed and for which Gateway owes them. That would be my overall introduction, but obviously I can answer any questions.
All right. Are there anybody else that we need to make comments, or are we prepared to go into questioning? It sounds like we're prepared to go into questioning. Questions from the council?
Mr. President.
Councilman?
Thank you. Thank you. To Mr. Silliman, what's the current lease with the Indians? When does their lease run out?
The lease with the Indians runs out in the year 2023.
2023. Okay, and then as far as the capital repairs that have been made, who determines whether or not they're considered repairs versus improvements on the facility?
The Gateway Board makes the determination, but in all cases, we are advised by a consulting engineer who looks very closely at the improvements, the specifications, and determines, number one, whether they're necessary, number two, whether they constitute a capital repair or routine maintenance. The team is responsible for routine maintenance. And whether they, if they're neither of those, then they might be an improvement, as you mentioned. An example of an improvement are the various changes that the Indians paid for to the ballpark back in 2015 and 16.
Okay, so what I guess that's what the scope of my question is so are improvements included in this agreement?
No, the improvements are something that the team decides when and if they're going to make improvements.
Okay, and then you indicated, this will be my last question, Mr. President. You indicated that the Indians were financially challenged. In what way are they financially challenged?
In a typical baseball season, they would get revenues from 81 home games, and those revenues would include people paying paid attendance. They would include concession sales. They would include parking and other revenues. This year, they are getting only 30 home games versus 81. And those 30 home games are bereft of the revenues they would normally, nobody's entering the ballpark, and therefore The ticket revenue is zero. Obviously, they're not selling concessions to an empty stadium. And that's a massive hit on the team's finances.
Okay, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question, Council President.
Yes, Councilwoman.
To Mr. Solomon, I understand that the revenues are obviously down, but isn't the overhead down with regard to employees and the organization itself commensurate to the lost revenue? So there's less people to pay, less overhead.
Councilwoman, the Major League Baseball reached an agreement with the Players Association on a reduced salary schedule for all the major league teams. So yes, you're correct. They're not paying as much in salaries as they would if they were doing a full schedule. Furthermore, the Indians have been able to save some money on ballpark operations that they would normally be spending for those games. But in terms of the ratios, the amount they're saving is nowhere near enough to make up for the shortfalls in revenue. And I don't know the exact numbers, but just as a matter of degree, even though we're not privy to the Indians' books, we can certainly look at the situation and understand that they're losing a lot more revenue than they're saving in costs.
So is the request to expedite these repairs? I mean, the timing of this is because it's an empty seat.
The request is not to expedite the repairs. The repairs, for the most part, have already been performed and paid for by the Indians. The request is to expedite the reimbursement of the team for the repairs.
Okay.
Because if in a normal world, sometime in 2021 or 2022, the sin tax proceeds would catch up and we'd reimburse them then. But given their situation in 2020, that's why we're resorting to this method instead.
I understand. I'm sorry, I didn't phrase it correctly, but the county is actually not in a great position right now to float money there. So I'm not sure, why we would front the money, basically to advance money from the county's budget at this point because of this gap in timing.
The money we're talking about doesn't come out of the county general fund. The money was created as part of the 2017 Cavs deal. So the money is part of the bond issue that exists regardless. When the county did the 70 million in bonds for the Cavs deal, they set in motion all this financing, and it's there regardless of the county's. It's separate and apart from the county's general fund.
I understand, but you're still asking us to escalate to advance money off schedule just because of the timing. Okay.
Mr. Silliman, isn't it, it's my impression that in some cases, Gateway approved this and we've owed some of this money since like 2 years or something, going back to 18. I don't think it would be necessarily correct to call it some kind of an advancement. It's actually money we do owe them from the past, is my impression. But also we're obligated by the contract to pay them, and it is not a fund that we could dip into for purposes, and we are desperately looking for ways to handle this, as you know. But this is a separate fund. It was a fund set up as a sports facility fund. This is money that we are contractually obligated to pay. Isn't that true, Mr. Silliman?
Yes, everything you just said is accurate.
all right.
I just want to clarify, Council President, I'm aware of the contract, but the
Okay.
characterization is not for past repairs. I mean, it wasn't like this is some debt we've owed since 2018. That wasn't how the presentation.
I can see
went
why you
forward.
would have gotten a different impression, but it's my impression that it is in fact money that we do owe and not money that we're advancing.
That's correct.
Well, the timing issue is what was brought to our attention.
I know, and the loss of revenue by the Indians, and the fact that we might be able to have used sin funds, sin tax funds, but we've got problems there as well. But I appreciate your penetrating questions to give us some clarity of what we're doing.
Well, I'm just asking questions. I don't think they're penetrating.
Okay, I'm sorry for my characterization of your questions. Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question, Council President.
Councilman Jones, then Councilwoman Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Silliman, have the Indians' revenues been, TV revenues been impacted at all, or do they remain the same?
Councilman, I can't answer specifically, but common sense would say that when you're televising 60 games as opposed to 162 games, that there's a significant reduction in TV revenues. That's just, I don't know the particulars, but common sense would say that they're cut in, that they're deriving probably less than half of their normal season TV revenues.
Okay. And also, I know on the Cavaliers facility, we receive admission tax, our fee from admissions. Is that true of the Indians as well? Have we lost that revenue as a county?
The councilman, the Indians do pay admission tax to the city of Cleveland. That money comes to the city of Cleveland. And yes, obviously with no fans in the stand, though, you don't have people paying admission tax.
Okay, so it was never coming to the county. It was always to Cleveland.
Yes.
Okay. I had one more question. I'm blanking on my third question. I'll come back to it if there's anyone else.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Baker.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Fred. Just a couple questions. Is the sport facility rear fund, is the total 25? Are we exhausting all the funds?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Councilwoman?
Yes, is 3.5 million that's being requested, is that total amount that's in the fund? The facility?
Bob Franz is on the call and he
Yes,
can answer better than I can, but my answer is no. And Bob, you want to?
Mr. Franz.
Yeah, Councilwoman, the current balance in this account is approximately 5.725 million.
Okay, thank you. And how much do we have in tax? I mean, there has been some. So what is the total dollars we do have as syntax money that would be going to pay for this request?
I'm sorry, I was
Councilwoman, the syntax monies that would be normally used to reimburse the Indians for this request are not sufficient to cover the 3.5 million. They're substantially reduced because of the various closures this year.
I understand all that. I'm just asking, what is the dollar amount? I understand it's substantially low, but what do happen now? Is it half? Is it a third, fourth? How much is in the syntax?
I would have to defer to Mr. Franz on that question.
Yeah, Walter, correct me if I'm incorrect here. But sin taxes to date for 2020 have been approximately 6.25 million.
That's correct.
That's about 8% off of the averages for the past 4 years, year to date. But in May and June, the May number was down about 66% compared to the same month average for May average over the past couple of years. And then June was down about, I'm sorry, the May number was 66%. So it was down about 36%. And then June was about 79%. So give or take 20% off of the June averages over the past couple of years.
All right, so if I may, so those dollars that you have, that on top of the 3.5 million that is being requested for repairs, or is that not being touched?
We don't owe any for any other money. There's not, this is not, this request is for the 3.5 million. It's not for more, correct. We don't owe the Indians any more money. This will pay our bills, so to speak, with Gateway, with the Indians. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Silliman.
Okay. And, all right, and does the 3.5 million, do you have a list of the repairs that this would be, capital repair this would be covering? Are you, it says to exceed 3.5 million, so is that, do you have an account list of how that would extend?
Councilwoman, there are approximately 7 different projects that comprise the 3.5 million that Gateway still owes the Indians. By far, the biggest cost item of that list are escalator repairs that send you up and down in the ballpark. Other repairs, there was a major project on the Players parking lot that was a significant item. And then there are a variety of other repairs where we paid part of the monies, but we didn't have enough syntax to pay all of it. So scraps left over, as the council president said, from projects as far back as 2018.
All right, and just my last question. We decided during the Q negotiations this fund for the facilities improvement. What was that before the pandemic? And if we would have had the syntax as we should have gotten, unfortunately, we don't. But if we would have, and this facility fund stayed as it was with the 5.75 million in it, what was that intended to be spent on? What major cost were we anticipating that would be spent on that we won't be spending that on anymore?
As I've previously testified, the Indians lease runs out in 2023. When we were making the Q deal, we knew that we had to turn to the Indians lease in the near future. And the thinking of creating a sports facility reserve fund as part of the Q deal was to get a head start on monies we expected we would need in negotiating with the Indians on a lease extension. And that was the intended purpose and still is the purpose of the reserve fund.
Okay, so that negotiating tool will be at least exhausted 3.5 from this 5.75 that's in there now.
That's correct,
the level
Councilman.
that we're spending. Okay, thank you, Council President.
Councilman Miller.
Mr. President, question probably best to Bob Franz. Given the intended purpose of the sports facility fund, is there any merit to providing that when the sin tax recovers and has sufficient revenue that the sin tax fund would reimburse the sports facility fund for the 3.5 million? Or are you content with having the sports facility fund be the final payment source for this item?
Councilman, I guess the long answer, not too long, hopefully, is the intended use of this fund for, as Mr. Silliman mentioned, for a future transaction or future negotiation was not contemplated to redirect other funds into this fund beyond what was in place in 2017. And I don't necessarily think that it's necessary to do that with the sin tax going forward for two reasons. One, there is a structure in place that when sin taxes come in, they fund debt service on the bonds that we issued in 2019. So it would be a little difficult to redirect that money in a meaningful way away from the existing structure. And two, the allowable use for the sin taxes is limited to major capital or capital items or capital repairs or improvements or anything resembling capital at a major sports facility. So whether we direct it back to this fund or keep it through the existing sin tax structure, I believe that you get to the same point. You get to the same end result.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. Any other questions? Well, hearing none, I'd like to.
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilman Gallagher.
I just have a quick question here. These are expenses going back to 2018, 2016, actually through but my question is, up until $500,000, we are legally obligated to fund a major capital repairs. Many of these are under $500,000. Might understand that the board has approved these before the work was done, or did the Indians do the work and then go to the board and give you the bill? Mr. Silliman. You're muted.
Councilman, the items that are showing as under $500,000 are leftover amounts of a bigger project that has been partially reimbursed but not fully reimbursed. I assure you that in reviewing capital repair requests by the teams, that the Gateway Board is very careful to ensure that no items are approved that are under 500,000. So what you're seeing here are projects that were partially reimbursed with past syntax monies, but not completely. And these are left over from a bigger project.
why wouldn't we be given the total cost, what was paid, and now what is owed? Because I'm looking at player lot expansion and guard shack. How much was that?
Councilman, I don't have that at my fingertips, but I do know it was well over $500,000.
Well, well, yeah, it's 661. You know, short of the Indians expanding their players there and maybe driving bigger cars, evidently, why would we pay that kind of money to expand their parking lot? You know, I have some serious concerns that there's a lot of things on here that are going the way of the Indians and not going the way of the taxpayers in Cuyahoga County. And I think we should have been received the total cost of each one of these items so we knew up front what you are now saying.
Councilman, the Gateway Board is governed by the Indians lease. The Indians lease spells out what is and what is not a capital repair, that for which Gateway is responsible for those in excess of 500,000. I can assure you the due diligence that the Gateway Board does to ensure that we are only reimbursing the Indians for what the lease requires. And it's certainly possible to look back at the lease and say, should we have allowed them to get reimbursed for this type of thing, a parking lot or whatever? But it's what the lease requires us to do, and that's what we follow.
Well, I just think the totals should have been put on here. It would have made things a little bit easier to understand for everybody involved. And hopefully in the future, we sharpen the pencil on this lease because it is without question tilting one way.
Thank you, Councilman Gallagher. Are there any other questions by the council?
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Tuma and then Councilman Jones.
Thank you. I understand we're kind of up against the time here, but I think this is important to ask. So to Mr. Parfowitz or Mr. France, in addition to this sports facility fund of 5.7 million, are there other reserves out there set up from the Q deal? And if so, what are the balances in those? I recall there were some other things there, including the sports facility fund that was created by the 1% bed tax last year.
Bob, do you want to talk or should I go?
Oh, Walter, go ahead.
Okay, so the one, it's 60% of the 1% bed tax is also set up in a sports reserve fund. There's approximately $480,000 in there, I believe, at this point in time. That's an internal fund, I believe, here with the county that I guess will be bringing some legislation forward to actually establish that account within the county, because it's just, these are taxes that are being collected and deposited here with the county. We just want to be sure that we segregate them. Those went into effect January 1 of 2020.
Okay, so there are other sports related accounts then. This isn't the only one, the 5.7 million.
Bob, did I miss anything there? You want to share anything?
Yeah, I don't think so, Councilman. You might be recalling a very complicated set of reserves and different things that were set up with the Q deal. This fund being one of them that we're talking about. But this fund and these monies are really the only ones that are kind of outside of that financing that we can access right now.
Okay. All right, appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilman Jones, and then I think we should probably move on. We've got a meeting to get to.
Okay, thank you. Briefly, remind me how the monies in these accounts were divided between the three teams, if I remember correctly. I don't know if it was a gentleman's agreement that it would be divided three ways, or if there was a contractual division of these dollars. I'd like to know remind me what that division was, and have the Indians tapped into their full third or
To the council president and to the councilman, if you're talking about the sin tax collections each year, there is a formal agreement between the city and the county, which both the city and the county authorize, that provides for basically a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 division of the sin tax, 1/3 going to the Browns. And that 1/3 is, by the agreement, sent over to City Hall each year. Of the 2/3 remaining, those are the sin tax monies that are used at Gateway for both the Cavs and the Indians. And there is a gentleman's understanding that the 2/3 is equally divided between the Indians and the Cavs. So when all is sorted out, it works out to each team getting a 1/3 share of the sin tax proceeds.
have both teams tapped into their allotted amounts? Or is that the few millions you were mentioning that's still left over?
Councilman, the Cavs have come very close to tapping their full allotted amount as a result of the Q deal and various improvements that were made tangential to the Q deal. So they have pretty much tapped into their share of the sin tax extension monies. The Indians have not, and the estimate, and Bob France can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe when you subtract out bond debt service and the 1/3 share to the Browns and what the Cavs have tapped out, that leaves approximately 2.3 million a year for the Indians between now and when the sin tax runs out in the year 2034.
Okay.
Seem to have lost the councilman.
Tap the gentleman's agreement still hold on. Where do the two teams stand now in relation to the understanding between them both? Oh, did you lose me?
For a minute.
Can you hear?
Yes, but it's now we can't. It's not so good for now.
Heard my question.
Did anyone hear the councilman's question well enough to be able to?
In terms of
I think he might have been asking if the understanding between the Cavaliers and the Indians, if they had an understanding as to where that, each had in relation to the funds that were available.
Council members, the Indians and Cavs have a fair understanding of who gets what portion of the sin tax proceeds.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, members of council. I know this is a big deal. There've been some great questions here, and we have some decisions to make in the future as we look toward the Indians' lead. But in terms of this bill come due, we owe it. We have it, and I really don't think we have any serious alternatives to paying it, and we can't draw down on it for any other purposes. So what I'd like to do is move to refer this item to the full council agenda for consideration for second reading adoption under suspension of the rules. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, this item will be on today's regular meeting agenda pending committee recommendation. Thank you all very much. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none, the committee of the whole is adjourned and we will pick up with the regular council meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Council members, you'll have to rejoin the next meeting then.
Okay, thank you.